Okay, so welcome back. Let's look at the other factors that basically shift the aggregate demand curve. Okay, so the two other factors is basically fiscal policy and monetary policy and the world economy. Okay, so let's look at fiscal policy and explain what fiscal policy is, and then we'll look at monetary policy and essentially explain what monetary policy is. Okay, so fiscal policy is any policy that is set by the government to influence the economy by basically changing taxes, by giving out free money in the form of transfer payments, or by the government actually purchasing goods and services. Okay, right, now let's see how fiscal policy works. Okay, for example, let's look at tax cuts and maybe an increase in transfer payments. Okay, so suppose the government decides to decrease taxes. Okay, so for example, when Trump came into power, he decreased taxes, right? We had the Trump tax cuts. Okay, for example, with this COVID recession, we had 1,200 stimulus checks being mailed to everyone. Okay, so that's an increase in transfer payments. Okay, right. So suppose the government collectively decides to decrease income taxes and also give everyone or mail everyone a stimulus check. Okay, this will increase what we call households' disposable income. And what is disposable income? Well, disposable income is income after taxes. Okay, right. So if your income increases, you are more likely to actually spend more. You actually become happy. Okay? So one way the government can actually get to stimulate the economy is by reducing taxes and basically by emailing everyone a stimulus check in the form of a transfer payment. Okay? An increase in disposable income causes people to spend more. As people spend more, consumption expenditure increases, and we know consumption expenditure is a part of aggregate demand because we have this equation y equals C plus I plus G plus NX. Okay, suppose NX is basically constant, G is constant, I is constant. An increase in consumption expenditure will basically increase Y. Okay, and also a tax increase or a decrease in transfer payments will basically decrease households' disposable income, and a decrease in household disposable income decreases consumption and will decrease aggregate demand. Okay, right, now the government can actually spend more and spend more on goods and services basically to influence aggregate demand. And remember, aggregate demand once again is equal to C plus I plus G plus NX. Okay, right, now if C and I and NX are held constant and the government increases its government purchases, okay, well, Y is going to increase as well. Okay, Y is basically going to increase as well, and that basically means an increase in aggregate demand. Okay, well, if the government decides to decrease G, Y will decrease, and that's going to be a decrease in aggregate demand. Okay, so the government can influence aggregate demand through fiscal policy, which is basically through tax cuts or tax changes, transfer payments, and government purchases. Okay, now the Fed also has the possibility or the sort of authority to actually influence the economy through what we call monetary policy. So monetary policy is basically cutting interest rates by printing more money, okay, in order to influence the economy. Okay, so changing interest rates by changing the quantity of money to basically influence the economy. That is essentially monetary policy. Okay, right, so an increase in the quantity of money will decrease interest rates. Okay, and since interest rates are decreasing, people will borrow more, firms will try and invest more, people will actually buy more, and that will actually increase aggregate demand. At the same time, when there's a increase in the quantity of money, okay, people feel that they have more buying power because they actually have more money, right? So they actually decide to spend more, and that actually increases aggregate demand. Okay, also a decrease in the quantity of money would decrease buying power. People feel like they'll have less money, and that would decrease aggregate demand. Okay, and a rise in interest rates will reduce expenditure, and reduce aggregate demand. Okay, if interest rates are really high, people will borrow less and people will want to spend less. Okay, and that will essentially reduce aggregate demand. Okay, now the next thing we'll look at is basically the world economy. Okay, the world economy basically influences aggregate demand in two ways. Okay, if the price, right, if there's a fall in the exchange rate, right, that will lower the price of domestic goods and services relative to foreign goods and services, and they essentially become cheaper. If they become cheaper, okay, if domestic goods relative to foreign goods are cheaper, our exports will basically increase because people actually buy more from the United States. Imports will decrease because foreign goods look more expensive. And as exports are increasing and imports decreasing, aggregate demand will increase again. Okay, so this whole equation, x minus m, becomes bigger. Okay, as it becomes bigger, y also becomes bigger as well. Okay, right, now if there's a rise in the foreign exchange rate, this will increase the price of domestic goods relative to foreign goods. Exports will decrease because our goods will look really expensive to foreigners. Our imports will increase because our goods will look foreigners' goods will really look cheap to us, and aggregate demand will basically decrease. Okay, and in that sense, x minus m will fall and y will basically fall. Okay, and the second way is basically an increase in foreign income increases the demand for US exports and increases aggregate demand. As foreigners become more wealthy, they decide to buy more from the US or buy more from abroad. Okay, that will actually increase the demand for US goods, and that will increase aggregate demand. If foreigners feel less wealthy, they don't buy as much American goods, and that will decrease aggregate demand. Okay, now this figure basically shows you aggregate demand. So aggregate demand is downward sloping. An increase in aggregate demand has to do with a rightward shift of the demand curve, aggregate demand curve, and a decrease in the aggregate demand has to do with the leftward shift of the aggregate demand curve. Now let's look at these examples. Okay, so I'm just going to stop over here. Just take a look at these examples and see if you can work through them. Okay, US exports to the European Union boom. How is this going to change aggregate demand? Okay, when US exports to the European Union boom, since exports is a component of aggregate demand, okay, this will actually increase aggregate demand. Okay, because remember, x minus m becomes bigger. More exports relative to imports, okay, becomes bigger, and aggregate demand will increase, and that is going to be a rightward shift of the aggregate demand curve. Okay, US firms build new gas fuel utilities. This will also increase aggregate demand. Okay, firms are investing more, so the I component of the demand equation will increase, and eventually Y will increase as well. The US price level rises. Okay, so let's look at this. The US price level rises. If the US price level rises, the quantity of real GDP demanded falls. Okay, nothing happens to the aggregate demand curve. Remember, aggregate demand looks at the relationship between the price level and the quantity of real GDP. Okay, so the quantity of real GDP demanded falls. Okay, right, so I'll stop here. Hopefully you actually understand what is going on. And again, if you don't understand anything, please don't hesitate to ask Dr. Kweku. You can always send me an email or probably have an appointment with me via Zoom. Okay, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Okay, thank you.